So I need to remind you of what all is due because guarantee some of you are currently not listening even right now. And people will be so confused of why there's missings and things like that when it's like really clear. I say it at least 10 times. This is what's due today. So, and where it's due even and what it's worth. So the corrections that you started yesterday are due today by the end of the hour in the bin. You are physically turning them in. I will give them back to you on Monday. So should you not be finished, like you can have an opportunity to still resubmit it for full points up until you take your state test for math. You take your state test for math on Wednesday. If you were to work on it after Wednesday, it would, and turn it in, it would be for half credit. Because I need you to do it before you take your state test, not after. So you can resubmit it for full credit Monday when you receive it. You can resubmit it by Tuesday. When I see you again on Wednesday, it'll be too late. So, I mean, you can still submit it for half credit, better than nothing, but that's how it goes. That's the second one. And the way that you get those points is by having the justification along with the new answer or workshop. I gave you the answers. That should not be a question of what the answer is. You're figuring out how they got to that answer. The problem solving skills you needed for that, to figure that out. So let me show you in Schoology where that answer key is. But remember, it just has answers. So that's why if you just have answers, you're not getting the assessment point for it. But it's in this week's folder. Answer key right here, it says answer key. And then you can take a look in there. Here's a reminder of how to get back to the test, the easy way versus clicking all the things in Schoology. Just go to Google, type in test nav. It'll be the first option. And then it'll look just like it will on test day. You'll go to the ACT Aspire. On test day, you'll get a username and password. We're not there yet. We're going to exemplars, math, early high school. And there you can see the questions. You know the answers. You could have hopefully written them down or can look them up in Schoology. You're figuring out why that's the answer. You're in groups so that you can work together on that. But if you guys get too loud, which often you guys do, I'll make you all be quiet. I'll put you up like last 30 minutes. I'm helping you on the screen anyway. So do the easier ones with your group. Last 30 minutes, I'll help you with the harder ones on the screen. I recorded all my classes so far, so like you'll have that to reference back to if you need it later. But you gotta turn it in by the end of class. I'm telling you that like non-negotiable. Questions on what you're doing, how to do it. I doubt anyone will finish that early, but in the off chance you do, a lot of you still need to show growth this week for IXL. I probably won't put that grade in yet. Redo the thing. I probably won't put the IXL growth grade in until maybe Sunday, but it was due today technically. Just work on it over the weekend. IXL is something you have access to at home. Show growth. That's why you had a tracker to like keep track of where you're at to see if you're showing growth. When I pull up those statistics for this week, I take a look. This person did one skill and showed no growth, 0. This person did 30 skills but showed no growth. I was a little lenient on that last week. That really did happen. But I don't know why they weren't showing growth. Like maybe they were doing skills that were way too low. Like maybe they were at 6th grade level and they were doing like 2nd grade skills and that's why they weren't growing. But I can see all of that information. The grade level of the work you did, the answers you tried, like things like that. So the more you work genuinely in IXL on the teacher skills, the recommended skills, the more that you should be growing. Questions on that? And that's project points. So, I mean, it affects your grade a bit. It's in the 20% category. That's what you need to make sure you get done for this week's growth. Questions, comments, concerns? So that's what's due. Work diligently. I'll help you second half of class. But that should be like your lesser priority. But I'll show you it in case. Oh my God. In case you want to take advantage of it. Listen, look at the screen. It's in this week's folder. It says optional and extra credit in the title. And I'm not making it specific to any grade category. I'll add it to wherever you miss points. So like, if you missed points that day we did the practice test, because you didn't finish, I'll add it to that. If you missed points for not growing in IXL last week, I'll add it to that. But, if you are an overachiever and have 100% in all of those areas, then I'll just add it to like assessment. So it's extra credit. It's basically a retake of this test. But it's not like a real test. It's extra credit. Well, grade you out of like 100%. So if you get 100%, more points than that. All right, question. And that's just like lower priority. Do your test corrections, upload your tracker, show more growth in IXL, but for the most part, to be seeing all you doing your corrections, this is something you're physically turning in. Explain why there are no solutions to the system of inequalities given below. Know that if you had a graphing calculator, you may or may not be able to graph these. I've never graphed inequalities in my calculator. So I wouldn't know, but Google it, whatever model calculator you have, and you can see what it looks like. When you graph it, these are both in slope intercept form, so I can show you, like I can graph it by hand on a test. What's the y-intercept of this one? -3. And what's its slope? -1/2. So that means I'm going down 1 to the right 2, down 1 to the right 2. I'm sketching my graph, so bear with me, but from my y-intercept going down 1 to the right 2, down 1 to the right 2. Would this symbol make a solid or a dashed line? So listen, look at the screen or look at me, or look at your paper. But inequalities, when you graph them, they're either solid or dashed. If it's this symbol, is it solid or dashed? It is dashed. It's only solid if it has that little line underneath that says it can also be equal to, like an equation. But this one's dashed. Is this one shaded above or below? Below is correct, if that's what you said, not quite sure. And below this line would be this way. So the solution to this inequality is in the shaded area. But this is a system of inequalities, so there's 2. The solution will be in the overlapping shaded area. So since they said there's no solution, do you think the shading is going to overlap? Yes. It shouldn't. All right, but just to show you, this one has a y-intercept of 2. We're going down 1 to the right 2, down 1 to the right 2. Solid or dashed for this symbol? Dashed, good. And is it shaded above or below? If it's y greater than, which side would be y greater than, above or below the line? Above. We're saying that y is greater than what's on the line, essentially. These y values are greater than the line. So look, there's no overlapping shaded area. To explain why, other than I graphed it, you could talk about what makes it that they're never gonna overlap. What type of lines are these, other than dashed? They're parallel. So you could say the system produces parallel lines with shading in opposite directions. Therefore, the shading will never intersect. And there is no solution. So the shading will never intersect. And there is no solution. I feel like that would be sufficient, but one thing that I'll ask students that I think would be good to add is what makes it parallel lines? Other than that, they never intersect. The same slope. So you could add something about how they make parallel lines because they have the same slope. -1/2, but different line intersect. Just to add in if you have 5. That would be that's my good on this one? Okay, other questions? Maya 14. So a map of Nelson County is laid out on the coordinate plane below, where the center of the county 0, 0, cell phone towers at 5, 4, Esteban's house is 10, -2. Each unit coordinate represents 1 mile. The tower signal range is 10 miles in all directions. Sometimes they use the same like setup for a few different problems, like they did in this one. Know that there might be some extra information we don't need because of that. So read the question, see what you're looking for. It says, how much land area to the nearest 10 square miles does the tower signal range cover? So it says that the tower signal range is 10 miles in all directions. What shape does 10 miles in all directions create? No. A circle, good. So, because I could go 10 miles, probably like your traditional ways, up, down, left, right. But I could also go diagonal, 10 miles that way, 10 miles this way. When you go 10 miles in every direction, you basically create a circle. Pretend that's a circle. With a radius of what? The cell phone tower in the middle, if it goes 10 miles in all directions, my radius is 10. 10 miles in all directions. So in that case, I'm basically finding the area of a circle. What's the formula for area of a circle? One of those things you have to memorize, have a test, make a flashcard. Maybe in the future, I'll make my students do that. Good, pi r squared for a circle. Circles usually have something pi related in their formulas. And then since area is unit squared, that's how I remember that it's pi r squared. Like, to me, that makes sense. So come up with ways that it makes sense to you so that you can memorize it for the test. If you didn't know that, that's why you get it wrong. It didn't say to use 3.14 for pi, so I'm gonna use the pi button on my calculator, even this one has a pi button. And my radius we said is 10, we're gonna square that. If you're stuck using this calculator, it is a little like finicky. You might want to do the exponent first and then times it by pi. But I'm gonna just type it in how it looks. Pi times 10 in parentheses squared equals this number. And it said round it to the nearest 10 square miles. That would be the tens place. Not the tenth with the TH, 10 square miles. They want to do round to. So based on the number to the right, depends on if we round up or if it stays the same. And so my answer ends up being 3/10. Which is one of the. One of the test strategies, I can't remember if I mentioned or not, so I'll just tell you again. That if you have 5 numbers, like say you have no clue what you're doing. Can't eliminate any of them, you're on a time crunch. If it's 5 different numbers, they say to go for the middle number. Doesn't mean it'll be like that all the time, but it happens to work for this one. And if you're gonna find it. Questions? All right, other questions? Kaylin? 13? 8. Okay, this one, there might be an easier way to do it if you really like memorize the standard form of linear functions. That's what this is. But personally, like me being good at studying, I like to memorize as few things as possible. So if the way that I'm doing it is not the way you would do it, or you know an easier way, great. I memorize like the least amount of things that I need to. That's a good strategy. So we want to know what the A in standard form would be if we have a line going through these points. And in the instruction, it said when it says line, assume that it's a straight line. I believe here. So I know that linear functions are also written in the form y equals mx plus b. What do I need to identify for y equals mx plus b? What 2 things do I normally replace with numbers? Okay, good. So if I can identify those 2 things, I can have something in linear form that I can then rearrange to standard form. I know that when I'm given 2 points, I can calculate the slopes with this formula. Y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So that's your rate of change formula. Hopefully you already know that formula because I told you it would show up in like all your math classes moving forward. But it also helps us calculate slope. So I'm going to label one of them x1, y1, the other x2, y2, and plug it into this formula. So the way that I labeled it, it becomes 4 minus a negative 2 over 3 minus a negative 5. When you subtract, it becomes 6 over 8, which simplifies to 3/4. Okay. So I found my slope. Let's see. I'm gonna also find my y-intercept. Although I don't think I really need to. I've been solving it all day, but based on rearranging and stuff, your slope is not affected by your y-intercept at all. So I probably wouldn't need it for this problem, but I'll just continue like I did with my other problem. The way that you could solve for your y-intercept is once you have your slope, plug in one of the coordinates you were given for x and y. So I'll just pick the easier one, the one that has positives, so it's easier to work with. So in that case, if I plug it in, 4 is y, x is 3, and I can solve for b. 3 times 3 is 9 over 4. So I multiply this out. And now we're gonna isolate B. So opposite of adding 9/4 would be to subtract it. Unfortunately, our y-intercept is not a whole number. And then again, I recommend you get a real calculator, so you can just use a fraction to decimal button. But I'll just do it by hand because I think that actually might be easier than trying to do it in this calculator and figure out what the decimal is. So if it's 4 minus 9/4, I want a common denominator of 4. The equivalent fraction that would give me 4 would be 16/4. Or do you calculate with the number? 16/4 minus 9/4 is 7/4 for my y-intercept. That part might not be that necessary for this problem, but it's not. So in slope-intercept form, here's my equation. If I want to make it more like standard form, it's a rule that for standard form, A, B, and C have to be integers, meaning not decimals, not fractions. How can I make any fraction not a fraction? How can I turn this into a whole number? Well, if I multiply by the reciprocal, it'll cancel out completely. If I just want to make it a whole number, I'm going to multiply by the denominator. Multiply by the denominator of any fraction that makes it not a fraction anymore. Like 7/2 times 2 equals 7. 1/5 times 5 equals 1. Okay. So if I multiply by 4, I'll make this a whole number and then I can put it in here. So, but what you do to one, you have to do to all to keep it equal. Everyone with me on that? Good. So it becomes 4y equals what's 4 times 3/4. Pretty good. That's the whole point. We wanted to make it a whole number. Cancel out the denominator. What's 4 times 7/4? Good. And now I could rearrange it, like I could finish rearranging, but all we needed to know is what A was. And A is in front of the X, now that it's not a fraction anymore, now that we made it a whole number. That's why the answer is yes. So again, long-winded definition. I bet if you really know your standard form, then that might be an easier way, but I'd rather give you fewer things to memorize. So questions on this? Questions on others? 21. Okay, so on a given day at a certain poultry farm, the relative frequencies of chickens, ducks, geese that laid an egg or did not lay an egg are given in the table below. 2 of them are given by letters. If it can be determined, what is the sum of the values of A and B in this table? Believe it or not, we did relative frequencies in unit 3, a long time ago. But regardless, you should notice that, for example, these add up to 1. So like your rows add up to the row total. If I had column totals, then these would all add up. So what needs to be added to 0.33 to give me 1? You guys with me on the thinking so far though? Like, does that make sense? How relative frequency tables work? So then what does A have to be? If the rows add up to 1 And A plus 0.33 is 1. What is A? 0.67 sounds good. Let me double check. 1 minus 0.33. Okay, so that's what A is. Down here we have 0.48 plus B equals 1. What does B have to be? 0.52, good. And it said, if it can be determined, what's the sum of the values of A and B? So now we just have to do 0.67 plus 0.52. And that is 1.92. Questions on that? That's easy. Questions on others? Yes. Okay, so same situation from earlier about the cell tower, that thing. This time, the strength of the tower signal to Esteban's house on the straight line distance between his house and the tower. What is the straight line distance in miles between Esteban's house and the tower? So they're asking for like the diagonal distance. I unfortunately cannot count like as easily as I would if it was going straight up or straight like left and right. But you could use distance formula if you know it. Personally, I don't think that was as easy to memorize. What you probably have memorized is Pythagorean theorem. That's what we're going to use for that. Go ahead. So Pythagorean theorem allows you to find the missing side of a right triangle. And you can do that on a graph. Like if you're going from a point to a different point, you can make a triangle like this. Where A and B would be like the smaller side. C would be the hypotenuse, which is what we're trying to solve for. And I just made a right triangle. That's why this works for that. It's like the distance formula, but the distance formula I think is hard to memorize. I think this is easier to memorize. So counting from here to here, so from 4 to -2 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units. They did say that each like tick mark is 1 mile, so that's 6 miles right here. Over here from 5 to 10 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units. This will be A, this will be B. I'm solving for B. So I'd have 6 squared plus 5 squared equals C squared. What's 6 squared? Good, and you can use this calculator even for that too. What's 5 squared? Okay, good. So if you don't know your perfect squares, that's fine. But 36 plus 25 equals C squared. What's 36 plus 25? And then we're isolating a C, that'll give us this distance. Opposite of squaring something is to square root it, and also the answers kind of give you a hint. right? 61 is not a perfect square, so that's why they just left it as square root of 61 is our answer. That's how you can find the distance between any 2 points on a coordinate plane. If they're not easy to count. Like this, any diagonals would not be easy to count. Questions on this one? I have time for one more, depending on how long it is. Two. Here. Number 6. Okay, Ryan and Tomas walked to school and then to the park as described. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit because I want to see what it's asking. It says the sum of the distance that Ryan walked and the distance that Tomas walked was at least 15 miles, but not more than 21 miles. One of the following is a graph of the possible values of x, which one? And look, x is like their distance to the park from the school. I need to find the sum of their distances that they both walk. So let's find Ryan first. So it says Ryan walked 2.3 miles from his home to meet Tomas at school. Tomas walked, I'll put his down here. 2.7 miles from his home to meet Ryan at school. Once they were at school, both of the boys walked X miles to the park. We'll add X to each expression. And then X miles back. So add another X to each expression. I want the sum of their distance. Sum means add them together. What's 2.3 plus 2.7? 5. What is X plus X plus X plus X? Okay, good. So this is their distance walked. We made an expression for it. This is the sum of their distance walked. They said that their sum of their distance walked was at least 15 miles, but not more than 21 miles. So that's a compound inequality. I'm gonna put the smaller number here, 15, the bigger number here, and use these signal words to figure out the symbol. So when it says at least 15 miles, can their distance walked be bigger than the 15? So then I can have it face the distance walked. The distance walked should be bigger than 15. Could it be exactly 15 if they said at least 15? So I'm gonna put the little line underneath. If they said not more than 21, is my distance walked allowed to be greater or smaller than 21? If it can't be more than 21. So then I'm gonna face it this way, where 21 is bigger in the relationship. If they said not more than 21, can it be exactly 21? So then I'm also gonna have a little line underneath. From here, you have to finish solving, like isolate the x. It's just now that I have like 2 inequality symbols to worry about. So if I do something here, I have to remember to do it on the other side of both inequalities. So it's 15 minus 5. I don't put the sign when I subtract. In the middle, I have 4x. What's 21 minus 5? 16, right? Okay. Here, opposite of multiplying by 4 would be whatever you do on one side. And I do not need to worry about flipping the sign because I divided a positive. Don't forget to put your papers in the bin before you leave. But 10 divided by 4 is 2.5. 16 divided by 4 is 4. That's why the answer was A. Because this one goes from 2.5 to 2. Yeah.